Something that I haven't seen anyone mentioning is that these are glued in, and you can see What's up guys, my name is Kale, and today on the King Games we're going to talk about this. This is the Nerf Pro Sender. Now this is Nerf's second flywheeler in the Pro line. It boasts a significantly cheaper price than their first blaster, the Nerf Pro Stryfe X. But does the cut in price also mean a cut in performance? That's what we're here to find out. Let's get into it. Now, by the time this video comes out, there are probably a ton of other reviews on this blaster already. But I want to give my thoughts on this blaster as someone who tours around the country, playing in professional tournaments, and putting these blasters in some of the harshest environments possible. And because of this, I tend to find more features or flaws than others. Now, first things first, when we're talking about any blaster, we want to know about the box and what comes in it. So, onto the box. All right. First off, I want to say that this box is a really attractive box. And one thing that I really like is that they've seemed to be in line with the box from the Stryfe X. Yeah, there's more white than orange, but overall the colors are pretty much the same. And I'm glad to see that. And we do have a claim of 150 FPS on this box, so we're definitely going to get to testing that. And a cool graphic here, which in my opinion makes this box wall worthy. On the back we continue with that same layout and all of the same colors, the grass field in the back, just like the box of the Stryfe X. And we get to see that they are going to be selling darts and mags separately. They also show us on here that the darts included are 38mm darts, which were previously the standard size for half-length darts, although Worker has since updated to 36mm for slim angle talons. Now let's talk about what comes in it. Obviously you've got the blaster itself. In the front we've got this small section of what appears to be rival rail, which is the same kind of rail that we've seen on everything in the Nerf Pro line, not just with the Stryfe X, but with their Nerf Pro gel fire stuff. We've also got a jam door here in the back. Now there is also a circular concavity here, which is definitely what the flywheels are. We've got our magazine release, our battery tray, rev trigger, firing trigger, what appears to be 2 sling loop locations, and a couple screws here that allow you to remove the cover for the battery tray and put in your AA batteries. It doesn't come with any batteries though. Also, you've got your safety right here. Press it forward and you won't be able to fire or even rev the blaster. Pull it back and you'll be able to do both. It also comes with one of these new proprietary Nerf Pro mags and 30 of these new Nerf Pro darts. Plus they include a pair of eye protection, which is something that every Pro blaster should have. Nice. All of this retails for $50 US. However, I have seen it on sale recently for as low as $30. Nice. Now, my first impressions of this blaster are pretty mixed. Things that I immediately like about it are that it has the same colors from the Nerf Pro Stryfe X. Even if there's more white than orange, they're still the same colors. Another thing I really like is this prismatic pattern that I don't see many people really talking about. It's textured, then smooth, then textured to make this like kind of prism pattern, this kind of like faux flake, and I think it looks really good. Now right off the bat, I can't help but notice the glaring similarities between this and the Cage Fighter / Luchadora. It is technically a bullpup, meaning that the magazine is behind the firing grip, but it doesn't have a foregrip or basically any front end, which does make it compact, but makes for some strange ergonomics. Like shouldering it, there should be something else for me to hold on to here, but there's not. So I either have to brace my hand here or consider holding the other direction. And it's definitely not my preferred layout. I will also say that it's kind of heavy. Now, it may be kind of a trick of leverage because all of the batteries are right here and below your grip, but it just, I don't know, it just kind of feels heavy. One other thing that they've done here is that they've hidden an end strike attachment point under here with this little cover. Now, we are going to talk about the Torrent in its own separate video, but one thing I want to talk about in relation to that is how this ecosystem goes together. The Torrent also takes the same type of magazines. They're exactly the same. I've tried swapping them. The ones that you buy extra are also going to be the exact same magazines. And they use the same darts. They also both hide an end strike attachment point underneath their covers. But the cover for the Torrent doesn't fit on this blaster. And the cover for this blaster doesn't really fit on this blaster.
That don't make no sense.
This also doesn't have a button for release. It's kind of like a detent. There's just like 2 little detents in here. Basically keep it on there. You just pull it off. And don't be afraid to yank it if it isn't coming off with light pressure.
Pause!
Another thing that I noticed is that the flywheels are way back here, which means that it has to go through all of this tubing to exit the barrel. And that can cause some barrel drag, which can negatively affect performance for a lot of blasters. But until we do testing, that's just a theory. Speaking of testing, let's go ahead and bring this thing over the chronograph and see how hard it shoots, and if it's meeting that 150 FPS claim on the box. Now, of course, we are going to test it with its own darts, but we also want to test it with a third-party option, in this case, the tried and true Worker Gen 3s, so we can compare it to other things on the channel and make sure that it's not the darts artificially lowering or increasing the performance, which is something that we have seen in the past. All right, now starting out with the included darts, we got a high of 143 FPS, a low of 113 FPS, an average of 133 FPS, and an FPS spread of 30. With worker darts, we had a high of 147 FPS, a low of 106 FPS, an average of 121, and a spread of 41 FPS. Now that's definitely some surprising results. With an average of 133 FPS, this blaster is not meeting, even on its own darts, the 150 FPS claim on the box. And using the worker darts, we got an average that was below 130 FPS, which would technically mean this would work for HVZ. Now that we know how hard it shoots, let's see how accurately it shoots. We're going to back things up to the hallway of my apartment and see how many times this blaster either misses, hits the target, or hits the much smaller can. Okay, first with its own darts. Now with worker darts. Alright, as you can see with the included darts, this blaster missed the target completely one time. It got 4 shots into the target, and 1 shot actually hit the can. Now when using the worker darts, this blaster didn't miss the target at all. It hit it every single time. But it did not get any can hits. Now that we've done all of our testing and I've taken this thing to some games, I want to talk to you about some of the things that I encountered. First thing I want to talk about is that accuracy. Even though we just went over how accurate it is in a closed environment, like 40 feet, when I actually took this into a practical application, I was having a lot of whirlybirds. And it didn't really seem to matter which dart type I used, fresh darts, used darts, it pretty indiscriminately would perform well for a couple shots and then go all over the place for any subsequent shots, especially when fired quickly. Now, like others have mentioned, I did check my flywheels to see if they were misaligned. Initially, they weren't misaligned, but they seem to have jogged over, give or take a millimeter. Even manually aligning this, I don't think that this is going to stay aligned, which is a huge red flag for me. And this is really disappointing because it does in fact have concave flywheels, which is what you'd expect from a pro blaster. And I was really excited for the accuracy of this blaster because the blaster that came before it, the Stryfe X, was very accurate. If you want to see a full review on that blaster, then check this video out over here. And if you want to see me do a head-to-head comparison of this to the Stryfe X, then let me know down in the comments. But I will say in the accuracy department that this blaster is definitely not what that blaster was. Now, let's talk about some of the other things that I don't really like about this blaster. First off, as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't like the ergonomics. This blaster really suffers from being in this awkward in-between stage. It's not small enough to be a sidearm, but it's not big enough to be a comfortable primary. Now, another thing that I encountered is how heavy the trigger pull is. Their choice to continue to go with the rival rail is disappointing for me. I think by now, we're all accustomed to Picatinny rails. I mean, even X-Shot on their Insanity series, which is not a pro line, is using Picatinny rails. And the placement of this particular one is not great either. This is probably the only really useful rival attachment that Nerf ever made. There isn't an ecosystem for this rail, at least not from Nerf. There are a few items that have been designed in the aftermarket, but Nerf doesn't rely on those. So what do they keep using this rail for if they're not going to release anything for it? It doesn't come with any attachments, an iron sight, or even multiple sections of the rail. So we're left with just using this. And this, although it is kind of a good attachment for what it was, doesn't either ergonomically or functionally belong in the positioning that it's in. Plus, if you're using the sling loops, then it's gonna kind of be a problem anyways. And this attachment is like heavy enough to almost be like real steel. Combine that with an already heavy, smaller blaster, just doesn't seem like combining those two things is gonna do anyone any good. Another problem area I wanna talk about is the mag and magwell situation. Placement of the mag and magwell is fine, but it is damn difficult to get it in and out. Like, it sticks in there. Even though this is proprietary, this is not a straight mag, this is an angled mag, and pretty much bears the same or very similar geometry to the worker angled Talon mag. The bright side to that is that an angled Talon mag does fit in this blaster, and it does fit in a little smoother than the one that's included with it, but still not the smoothest. Now, one issue to note with this is that once you insert it all the way in, there is no stopping ridge on here, so it does over insert. So if you do choose to use this, you need to insert the mag all the way and then pull back until it locks. Now, after playing with this blaster extensively, I did get used to doing that in a very quick motion for reloads. Slap the blaster in, pull it back, and then aim down. But the problem with that is even when you're really good at it, it takes you a couple extra seconds. If you were competing with, is what the name Nerf Pro implies, is that it's a blaster that's meant to be competed with, those extra seconds will get you tagged. Now, this angled mag, yes, will fit into the sender, but when we take the mag that came with the sender, does it fit into an angled Talon mag blaster? Nope, because the geometry is slightly different. Now, if you look really closely, there's actually a cutout on both sides of the mag on an angled Talon mag, which creates like a channel for the magazine to lock into. In contrast to that, Nerf only cut out one side of the magazine, and the other side is as square as the rest of the body, which is why it doesn't fit the geometry. Now, on top of the cutout situation, we also have this stopper here, which is meant to hit the bottom of a mag well, which means if your mag well is deeper than this line, it also wouldn't work with that. And also you can see scrape marks here for where in the blaster it was designed for, it is too tight, which is really annoying. And that's really unfortunate because I actually really like the design of this magazine. I think first, it's translucent, which is a win over mags like the Nerf Pro Stryfe X opaque magazines, because you can see how many darts are in them, which makes the amount of time before reloads or checking your mag less. I also think that the design language of these little angled cuts and details is really cool, and I wish it didn't get in the way of using this magazine with other blasters. This is also a 15-round magazine, so it is expressly a downgrade over worker Talon mags, which are 18 rounds, and pretty much the same size. But I do like that there's not any sharp corners on the bottom of the mag for if you're dropping them, reloading them, throwing them, etc. And I do think that the hole right here, which could possibly be intended for like a sling loop or something, is also kind of a cool feature. There's also a little bit of branding right here that says Nerf Pro on the gray part. Another thing that's unfortunate is if we wanted to take these off and create extenders, it doesn't look like we're going to have a good time doing that, because something that I haven't seen anyone mentioning is that these are glued in, and you can see the bubbles from the glue on the actual caps. So yeah, you're not going to have a good time taking these apart, even if you did want to switch to the Nerf Pro ecosystem for future blasters. Now, as for the darts themselves, they seem to be made of a decently dense foam. The heads are narrow, so they're meant to work with springers. It's got cool little branding right here at the tip that says Nerf Pro on it, and I didn't have any decaps no matter how many times I fired them, so I'd say it probably has strong glue. Now, let me know down in the comments if you'd like a comprehensive dart comparison guide where I take this dart and all of the other major darts that we use and compare them. Things like how durable they are, how accurate they are, how they affect FPS and their weight, and things like that. If that video sounds interesting to you, then like I said, let me know down in the comments, and I might just go ahead and do one. But this video is focused on the blaster, not the darts, so let's move on. Now, let's talk about some of the things I do like about this blaster. Unfortunately, that list is pretty short. I do like the color scheme, I do like that they're continuing the Nerf Pro line, and I do like that even their proprietary mags are focused with hobbyist geometry in mind, even if the execution wasn't good. I also like that they've decided to go with AAs for accessibility. I would have liked to see something more like the enclosed lipo on the Stryfe X, or maybe something more along the lines of what Dartzone is doing, but either way, all three of those options allow people who are not used to using lipos to have access to pro blasters, and that is a good thing. The only other blaster in this category that uses AAAs is actually the Dartzone Pro Mark III, which is a blaster that I really liked. And that's pretty much where the things I like end. So at the end of the day, what are my final thoughts on this blaster? Well, I think it's too little too late. This blaster has the performance that we would have loved in like 2015. This blaster's accuracy is more in line with blasters of that era and not with modern flywheelers, including ones that they've offered to us before like the Stryfe X. So they're definitely capable of making something that accurate. Now, I know price was a previous contention in the Pro line, with the Stryfe X being really expensive, and they did manage to bring the price down. But even at $50, I can't recommend this blaster over other options in the same price category, or just going with a more expensive option.
Oh, man!
It's really not all that accurate. The heavy trigger pull makes for a slow rate of fire for semi-automatic. It doesn't have good ergonomics, It's not in an ecosystem of attachments, although there is some merit in the fact that it can take angled Talon mags. Even with angled Talon mags, it's a bit clunky. And that kind of fits the overall feeling of this blaster, from how its ergonomics are, to its weight, to how it performs. It's just an underwhelming release that would have done better a decade ago. Now, I do have a video coming out of the Torrent, which is the blaster that was released alongside this blaster, and Nerf's first Pro Springer. I don't want to spoil too much, but I'll say that I think higher of that one than I think of this one. Now, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss when that video comes out. While you're there, you might as well throw us a like if you like the kind of content that we're putting out. Now, even if you're not into the performance category of blasters and you decide to pick this up on sale for $30, I don't think it's the end of the world, but I still think even at that lowest kind of bottomed out price, I'm not sure there's any price that I'd really recommend this blaster, as I found it to be one of the most disappointing blasters of the year. Now, if you wanted to see my thoughts on the rest of the most disappointing blasters of the year, I got about another 9 or 10 in this video, including this one. If you want to see what I thought were the best blasters of the previous year, then check this video out instead. Or both. But that's all I have for you today, and until next time on the King of Games, have a blast.
Come on, Jacob. You want to play now or you want to? Okay. Hitting the leg. You running?